It is just a few days before the opening of the 13th Winter Olympic Games. 7 miles from the small resort town of Lake Placid, New York, stands an isolated fortress, the Olympic Village. Here, dozens of the world's finest amateur athletes arrive daily. Security is tighter than at any time in history. An army of New York State troopers, foreign secret police, and other security personnel with an elaborate array of surveillance technology protect more than 2,000 village residents. In addition to athletes from 37 countries, hundreds of staff and volunteers have been carefully screened and selected to provide essential services. A few have been invited to entertain and to participate in the fine arts program as part of an effort to enrich the cultural environment. Gerald Lynas, a 38-year-old New York City artist, has been commissioned by the Lake Placid Olympic Organizing Committee to create snow and ice sculpture as a decorative background for village welcoming ceremonies, and to provide an opportunity for residents to interact in the creative process.
Chiseled it smooth as glass on the...
With Mr. Lynas are sculpture students Greg Rudd and Deborah Homer, who have volunteered to help with this unusual project, an assignment which has been in the planning stages for 7 months. Very much honored by his invitation, Mr. Lynas, a faculty member of Pratt Institute and successful freelance art director, set aside 5 weeks to live in Lake Placid. But today, the resident sculptor is facing Olympic-sized problems.
When I got to the village, I was very disappointed that there was no snow for the sculpture. After all, the Fine Arts Committee had emphasized that this year, art was to be given a more significant role in the games. I had conceived a piece which I felt would live up to that. I called the organizing committee to see if we could get just a little bit of the machine-made snow that was being stockpiled, but was told in effect that we were out of luck. I was not about to give up that easily. We called everyone we thought might be able to help us get some snow. The town mayor, the highway department, even the village maintenance crew.
During the following week, they managed to get 3 truckloads. But the material, some of which had been scraped from the speed skating rink, was in no condition for sculpting. The artist then decided to make the modest pile appear larger by hollowing, quadrupling its surface area.
It wasn't much, but we tried to make the best of it, although I knew it would be nearly impossible to create a piece worthy of the Olympics with the material we had.
And a very pleasant good morning to you on WLPW-FM, the voice of the Olympics here in Lake Placid, New York. Temperature is 22 degrees on this Tuesday morning, the 13th of February, 1980. Yours truly, Dennis Ryan, sitting in with you on this momentous day. A lot of people have waited a long time for this, the opening day of the 13th Olympic Winter Games here in Lake Placid. Weatherman says partly cloudy throughout the day. Temperatures will be in the mid-20s. Probability of precipitation, 10% today, 20% tonight and tomorrow. No major accumulation of snow is expected. However, the word from all the venues is that artificial snow is in full progress. And as far as the ski jumps are concerned, we know for a fact they're all set to go. Mike Pace Mountain is all set, ready to go.
Thank you.
Of course, Mount Van Hovenberg at the bobsled illusion, fully refrigerated top to bottom. Speed skating oval, same thing, fully refrigerated, all set, ready to go. The only problem may be at Mount Van Hovenberg, the site of the cross-country ski races and the biathlon. However, they've been working 24 hours a day, round the clock, making mountains, and we mean mountains of man-made snow just for this occasion. Stand by for action, folks, because here we go.
During the day, when the athletes were out practicing or competing, the bleak and deserted scene made me think of the compound's future as a penitentiary. Every time I looked at the sculpture, I fought off my frustration at the snowless weather and the committee's lack of concern for the project. I really felt committed to their stated objective to elevate art to its traditionally important role in the games. And then I learned that the village superintendent was planning to bulldoze the sculpture if I didn't clean it up and make it more presentable.
Whoa. You all right? I'll be right up.
We were trying every technique we could devise, pulverizing, making slush, building with large chunks, but it was very slow going. When I learned that the kitchen manager had arranged to get us some ice blocks, I was relieved to think that somebody cared. He was getting a regular supply from Canada for creating decorations in the dining hall, and he was kind enough to share them. Although this was not exactly what we had had in mind, the 300-pound blocks would make wonderful sculptures. Debbie, who had been pretty sick with the village flu, got right to work, apparently inspired by the potential of the new material. Working all day in the cold was terribly uncomfortable. The flying disc, my favorite sport, provided a great means for warming and limbering up and relieving anxiety. By late afternoon, when the athletes returned, the village came alive. At times, I felt that this international community was the center of the universe. But the disco made me feel as if I were back in Manhattan. Every night, the theater featured well-known American entertainers. They scheduled early shows to accommodate the athletes' curfews. In the same building was a cinema, a favorite hangout for many of the athletes, especially the Chinese. The Russians brought their own films. Everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves, and I really wished that they could have a beautiful and interesting piece of sculpture to enjoy as well. But at this point, it was a mere fantasy. After 15 frustrating days came the break we had been waiting for. One of our many phone calls had been to the superintendent of highways for the town of North Elba. Independent of the Olympic Committee, he had agreed to allow 3 of his drivers to deliver surplus machine-made snow to the village. was like striking gold. We created many windows by freezing water in the barrels. These translucent details attracted people to the interior of the sculpture.
There's a gallery inside. It's kind of interesting. In fact, there's a prize inside.
The inside had a magical character all of its own. I allowed Debbie and Greg to create anything they felt like creating.
Oh, and look how transparent it looks.
As the character of the sculpture became more obvious, visitors were more frequent.
Hongxing is from China. He's a speed skater, and this is his first Olympics. He's told me that he couldn't believe this sculpture, the immense calculations and precision of everything in here.
Is this where Jack Frost is in prison?
I like coming in here and seeing what's developed since the last time I came in. It's, as I say, it's always changed. It's sort of kaleidoscopic. Reminds me of when I used to go caving back home. You know, you get the feeling that you're the first one to come in, no matter how many more might be there. It is sort of primordial.
The candles changed the sculpture from an igloo to a cathedral. Here in the head of the north wind, late at night, I dreamed of the past and all of the games that had come before.
The earliest Olympic rituals date back more than 3,000 years to ancient Greece. As a significant part of the festivities, artists competed for honors and created timeless works of beauty, deifying the winners. The Olympics grew to such importance that the intervals between games became a measure of time. One Olympiad was 4 years. During times of war, a sacred truce was declared to guarantee safe passage to Olympia. The ancient games gradually deteriorated as athletes rejected the honor and pride of competition in favor of cash prizes and personal gain. In 393 AD, after Greece lost her independence, the games were banned as pagan festivals by the Roman Emperor Theodosius. 14 14 centuries later, in 1896, a French scholar, Pierre de Coubertin, resurrected the ancient Greek tradition and established the modern Olympics. The first Winter Games were held in France in 1924. Once again, amateur sports competition would bring the nations of the world together. The sacred truce, long forgotten.
The 1980 Winter Games would prove to be another Olympics with 20th century problems. People came back to the village with stories that sounded unbelievable.
Don't sell me a goddamn ticket if you're going to cancel it.
And I didn't get that.
You know, I mean, the thing is, they should have said...
This is the schedule is due to subjects change without notice, which means they do not have to notify us.
I watched a few of the accounts on television.
We got to there was about a 5-hour wait for the buses to leave. By the time we got to the event, it was over with.
It all seemed so far removed from the high ideals that the modern games were supposed to represent. Part of my original assignment was to encourage active participation in the creative process with the residents of the village, including the athletes.
All right, man, yeah. Oh, yeah. That looks like it.
Van, from the maintenance department, gave us a few of his lunch hours. Renata, one of the 60 hostesses in the Olympic Village, was a good-natured helper who gave us time whenever she had a moment to spare. The Romanian bobsledder didn't speak to anyone. He concentrated on his piece, his competition apparently finished.
I think it's a very fast man. The sculpture.
What does it look like to you?
Buddha.
Oh, Buddha.
We've never seen anything like this before. It's meant to be something.
The north wind.
Ja!
Vadå? Blåser.
Munnen.
Visst, han blåser. Nordanvinden, hon blåser.
Could you do that for me again?
Can I see your mouth?
Gör det?
Again. Now hold it.
Of course not.
Cameras began to appear more frequently. People posed in and around the sculpture. I was flattered that they would be taking these pictures back to their homelands. Building a sculpture rock by rock was not exactly what I had expected.
Ah, nuts.
I don't think I could have done very much without Greg's help. He picked up where I fell down. He was almost always in a jovial mood, something that I needed in heavy doses. The warm sun glazed the surface of the small ice figures, making them irresistible to touching. I loved the daily changes. I was really touched by the people who actually helped us. The sculpture was no longer just ours. It had become everyone's.
seating is a little bit... Isn't it, though? Yeah. You missed it. Get down. Come on. Slide. What slide? What is that? The bobsled? Yeah. I'm ready. Oh, my Lord. Look at this one up there. Hey, beautiful doll, you great, big, beautiful doll.
Try martini for
Yeah, for learning, perfect.
Just checking to be sure nothing suspicious is going on in here.
You are.
Where are you going?
Whatever. Cheers.
Sofa.
Okay, now for something good. I'm gonna expose my...
The Chinese delegation walked in my room, and they gave me this pin. And all of a sudden, I looked at the pin, and I was hooked.
On Pin Mania.
Jerry Lynas returned home to his family 2 days before the end of the games, symbolically closing the eyes of the north wind. He said that the sculpture should not witness the vandalism and thievery which began to surface as the Olympic Village emptied. By the time the last athlete had left, the north wind had already begun its natural deterioration. Perhaps the water, which made the snow, could have once fallen as rain on Mount Olympus.